Good evening. If you are watching this after dinner, I want you to listen carefully because what I am about to share may completely change how you think about your evening meals. Most people believe heart disease happens suddenly, like a lightning strike out of nowhere. But in reality, it often develops quietly over years through small habits, repeated night after night. I am Dr. William Lee, a physician and researcher focused on cardiovascular health and healthy aging. Tonight, we are discussing several common evening foods that research has linked to arterial stiffness, inflammation, blood pressure disruption, and long-term heart damage in adults over 50 years old. A major study published in the European Heart Journal followed thousands of adults over the age of 50 for more than a decade. Researchers discovered that individuals who regularly consumed certain foods late in the evening were far more likely to develop cardiovascular problems compared to people who avoided those same foods at night. The statistics were alarming. Rates of arterial stiffness increased dramatically. Risks for atrial fibrillation rose sharply. Major cardiac events became significantly more common. What shocked researchers most was not only the foods involved, but the timing. Many of these foods are considered healthy during the daytime, yet become metabolically stressful when eaten at night by aging bodies. As we age, the body changes in ways most people never fully understand. The heart, blood vessels, kidneys, liver, and even the digestive system begin operating differently after 50. Hormones that regulate blood sugar, inflammation, and blood pressure follow strong circadian rhythms. During the evening, insulin sensitivity naturally declines, inflammatory activity increases, and the body becomes less efficient at processing sodium, sugar, and heavy meals. This means foods your younger body handled easily may create silent stress on your cardiovascular system decades later. The danger is not always immediate. Instead, damage accumulates slowly until symptoms suddenly appear in the form of fatigue, hypertension, arrhythmia, or heart disease. One of the first foods that surprised researchers was fruit juice consumed at night. Many people believe juice is harmless because it comes from fruit, but the body processes liquid sugar very differently than whole fruit. Orange juice, cranberry juice, apple juice, and even pomegranate juice can create major blood sugar spikes during the evening hours. Studies show that after age 55, the liver becomes less efficient at processing fructose at night. Instead of being used for energy, much of the excess sugar becomes triglycerides circulating through the bloodstream. Over time, elevated triglycerides contribute to arterial plaque buildup, inflammation, and increased cardiovascular strain that quietly damages the heart over many years. Your mitochondria also play an important role in this process. Mitochondria are the tiny energy factories inside every cell of your body, including your heart muscle. After 40, mitochondrial function gradually declines with age. By 65, many adults are producing significantly less cellular energy than they once did. When you consume fast-digesting sugars late at night, your aging mitochondria struggle to keep up with the metabolic demand. This creates oxidative stress and inflammation inside the cardiovascular system. The heart absorbs that burden silently. Many people never feel symptoms until years later when blood pressure rises, arteries stiffen, or chronic fatigue begins interfering with everyday life and independence. If you enjoy fruit juice, timing matters greatly. Drinking it earlier in the day gives your body a much better opportunity to process natural sugars efficiently. Morning hours are when insulin sensitivity and liver metabolism function at their peak. Better yet, replace juice with whole fruit because fiber slows sugar absorption dramatically. A whole orange affects the bloodstream very differently than a glass of orange juice. Pairing fruit with healthy fats like walnuts can also reduce metabolic stress. Walnuts contain omega-3 fatty acids shown in several studies to support blood vessel flexibility and cardiovascular repair. Small changes in timing and food combinations can create meaningful long-term benefits for aging hearts. Another major concern for older adults is red meat consumed at dinner. Protein itself is extremely important after 50 because aging muscles require consistent nourishment to maintain strength and mobility. However, the source and timing of protein make a significant difference. Research from large population studies found that adults consuming red meat regularly during evening meals had higher levels of TMAO, a compound strongly associated with arterial inflammation and cardiovascular disease. TMAO forms when gut bacteria break down compounds naturally found in beef and lamb. Elevated levels are linked to increased risk of heart attack, stroke, and long-term plaque buildup within aging arteries and blood vessels. The evening hours create an especially dangerous environment for inflammatory compounds from red meat. Inflammation naturally rises at night due to changes in cortisol and melatonin regulation, particularly after age 60. When heavy red meat meals are added into that environment, the body experiences a stronger inflammatory response. Over time, this contributes to chronic low-grade cardiovascular inflammation that damages arteries quietly and persistently. Many adults assume fatigue, chest heaviness, or shortness of breath are simply part of aging when they may actually reflect years of inflammatory stress from dietary habits. The body often sends warning signs long before a major cardiac event ever occurs, but those signals are frequently ignored. I once worked with a retired school principal named Gerald who struggled with fatigue and mild breathlessness after dinner every evening. He believed it was simply normal aging. After reviewing his diet, we discovered he consumed large portions of red meat nearly every night for decades. Steak, roast beef, and processed meats had become routine. We gradually replaced most evening red meat meals with fish, legumes, and lean poultry. Within several months, his inflammatory markers improved significantly. His breathing became easier, his energy returned, and his chest discomfort disappeared. Gerald later told me he felt younger, lighter, and mentally clearer simply because he changed what he ate during the evening hours. Sweetened yogurt and flavored dairy products represent another hidden nighttime danger. Many health-conscious adults choose low-fat fruit yogurts believing they support digestion and heart health. Unfortunately, many flavored yogurts contain extremely high levels of added sugar. Consuming those sugars late at night creates a metabolic burden on the aging body. During sleep, the body should focus on tissue repair, cardiovascular recovery, and hormonal regulation. Instead, excessive nighttime sugar forces the pancreas and blood vessels into stress mode. Research shows repeated nocturnal blood sugar spikes accelerate endothelial dysfunction, a condition where blood vessels lose their flexibility and ability to regulate blood flow properly throughout the cardiovascular system. The endothelium is the delicate inner lining of your blood vessels. Healthy endothelial cells allow arteries to expand and relax naturally as blood moves through the body. However, repeated sugar spikes create inflammation that damages these cells over time. In older adults, endothelial repair slows dramatically because regenerative capacity declines with age. The body simply cannot replace damaged vascular tissue as efficiently as it once could. This is why sweetened dairy products become far more dangerous after 60 than they were during younger years. Persistent blood sugar fluctuations increase stiffness inside arteries and contribute to hypertension, circulation problems, fatigue, and elevated cardiovascular risk throughout the aging process. There is a healthier alternative for people who enjoy yogurt at night. Plain full-fat Greek yogurt without added sugar provides beneficial protein, probiotics, and healthy fats without the same glucose burden. Adding fresh berries creates natural sweetness while providing antioxidants that support vascular health. A small amount of raw honey may also be tolerated better than processed sugars. Cinnamon is another valuable addition because studies suggest it improves insulin sensitivity and stabilizes blood sugar overnight. The key is avoiding large doses of refined sugar during the evening hours when the body's metabolic machinery is naturally slowing down. Small nutritional adjustments often produce powerful improvements in long-term cardiovascular resilience and recovery. Whole grain bread and crackers may be the most surprising food on this list. Many doctors recommend whole grains for heart health, and during the daytime, they can absolutely be beneficial. However, nighttime changes everything. Whole grain carbohydrates still raise blood sugar levels, especially when eaten without sufficient protein or healthy fat. Studies tracking older adults found that evening grain consumption was associated with higher arterial stiffness compared to eating the exact same foods earlier in the day. The calories were identical, but the timing changed the outcome. This highlights how aging bodies become increasingly sensitive to circadian metabolic rhythms that influence glucose regulation and cardiovascular repair mechanisms during nighttime hours. After 50, enzymes responsible for processing carbohydrates become less active during the evening. Meanwhile, hormones affecting blood pressure and vascular tension become more dominant at night. When large amounts of carbohydrates are consumed during this period, the body struggles to clear glucose efficiently. Blood sugar remains elevated longer, inflammation increases, and arteries experience greater metabolic stress. Many older adults believe evening crackers or toast are harmless bedtime snacks, but repeated nightly glucose exposure gradually damages blood vessels over time. What seems small in the moment can create meaningful cardiovascular consequences years later when combined with aging physiology, reduced insulin sensitivity, and declining vascular resilience across the entire circulatory system. One woman named Margaret experienced this firsthand. She ate whole grain crackers every evening, believing they supported her heart because they were marketed as healthy. Despite maintaining a generally clean diet, her inflammatory markers continued increasing year after year. After changing her evening snack to avocado, nuts, and seeds instead of grain-based carbohydrates, her cardiovascular markers improved significantly within several months. Her doctors struggled to explain the improvement, but the answer was clear. Her body responded positively when nighttime metabolic stress was reduced. The aging cardiovascular system processes fat-dominant and protein-rich evening foods much more efficiently than carbohydrate-heavy snacks that continue stimulating glucose and insulin activity deep into the night. The most damaging category of all is processed sodium consumed during evening hours. Canned soups, frozen meals, deli meats, packaged snacks, soy sauce, and heavily salted convenience foods place enormous strain on the aging cardiovascular system at night. Most people understand sodium affects blood pressure, but few realize the timing dramatically changes the damage. Research shows older adults consuming their highest sodium intake during evening meals developed significantly higher rates of heart enlargement and vascular dysfunction compared to those consuming similar sodium levels earlier in the day. The kidneys simply cannot process sodium efficiently at night, particularly after age 60 when renal function naturally declines with aging and reduced circulation. Your kidneys follow a strong circadian rhythm. During daytime hours, they regulate fluid and sodium balance much more effectively. At night, kidney processing slows considerably. When excessive sodium enters the bloodstream late in the evening, fluid retention increases and blood pressure rises while the body should be resting and recovering. The heart is forced to pump against greater resistance for hours during sleep. Many older adults unknowingly spend every night placing their cardiovascular system under tremendous stress simply because of evening food choices. This repeated strain contributes to hypertension, arterial stiffness, enlarged heart tissue, stroke risk, and chronic inflammation that quietly damages the body for years before obvious symptoms emerge. One especially concerning effect involves something called nocturnal dipping. Healthy blood pressure naturally drops during sleep, allowing the cardiovascular system time to recover. However, adults consuming large amounts of evening sodium often lose this protective nighttime dip. Their blood pressure remains elevated throughout the night, increasing the risk of heart failure, stroke, and vascular damage. Researchers refer to these individuals as non-dippers. Unfortunately, non-dipper status becomes increasingly common with age, particularly among adults consuming processed evening meals. Sodium also activates inflammatory immune cells inside blood vessel walls, accelerating plaque formation and further increasing cardiovascular risk. These processes develop quietly, often without noticeable warning signs until serious complications eventually appear. Fortunately, the body remains remarkably responsive to positive changes even later in life. Adults in their 70s and 80s can still improve vascular function, reduce inflammation, and support healthier blood pressure patterns through consistent evening habits. Limiting sodium intake at dinner, choosing whole foods instead of processed meals, emphasizing potassium-rich vegetables, and reducing nighttime sugar and heavy carbohydrates can produce measurable improvements surprisingly quickly. Blood pressure rhythms begin normalizing, inflammatory markers decline, energy levels improve, sleep quality often becomes better as well. The heart wants to heal when conditions support recovery rather than constant stress. Aging does not eliminate the body's ability to improve when given proper nutritional support and recovery opportunities. What you eat after sunset matters more than most people realize. These foods are not dramatic villains that create immediate disaster overnight. Their damage is slow, quiet, and cumulative. One unhealthy evening meal may not seem important, but repeated over years, those choices reshape the cardiovascular system in powerful ways. The encouraging reality is that small, consistent changes can begin shifting your health in the opposite direction almost immediately. Your heart responds rapidly when inflammation decreases and metabolic stress is reduced. Protecting your independence, mobility, and quality of life after 50 depends heavily on the invisible decisions made quietly each evening long before symptoms ever appear or serious disease develops later.